If there's one thing I'd say Xbox fans have in abundance, it's patience. They waited years for a more powerful console under their televisions following the Xbox One release. They waited even longer for the touted industry-leading first-party studios organisation, and arguably, if we're talking sheer size, they got that too. Indeed, they whooped and hollered when Bethesda became a part of the Xbox family. They cheered from the sidelines as Microsoft battled against Sony and the FTC to purchase Activision Blizzard. And now the dust has settled, and with 4 studios closed in a shock announcement this week, and with further cuts across Microsoft's gaming division reportedly planned, the patience and trust of the hardcore Xbox fanbase has seemingly run out. The announcement earlier this week that a number of studios, including Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks, were being shuttered came as a shock to the entire industry for a number of reasons. One studio, Arcane Austin, had recently released Redfall, which didn't do that well, but has released brilliant games in the past like Prey and Dishonored. The other big studio on the list, Tango Gameworks, had recently released the extremely popular, at least with those that actually played it, and critically acclaimed Hi-Fi Rush. As Xbox fans caught wind of the news, the result was expected. Many fans, pundits, and industry journalists are taking Microsoft to task for it, and rightly so. Microsoft is no stranger to screw-ups. We all lived through the Xbox One launch, and the recent uproar and rumours of Xbox exclusives going multi-platform was allowed to just bubble away for months before Xbox leadership spoke up. This time though, well, this time feels different. And if I had to put my finger on the why, when it comes to that, I need only look at one game and one studio, and that's Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush. As anyone who watches the XboxEra podcast knows, my co-host Nick and I share a sentiment in that sometimes Microsoft as a company just doesn't get it. By it, of course, I'm referring to gaming. The tribalism of it, the art and creativity of it, the heart of it. I'm totally aware that I'm generalising in referring to Microsoft as some single-minded creature, but the eventual decisions that come across to us consumers seem to often lend credence to my general line of thinking here. Since Phil Spencer took over from the Meyerson Windows-led time for Xbox, he's made broad and sweeping changes that for the most part have resulted in incredible value for gamers. Game Pass is great, the hardware across Series S and X is simple and powerful and well made, and he led Microsoft on a spree of studio purchases to finally give us the one thing that Xbox fans were truly lacking: really great, consistent first-party games. Microsoft is no stranger to innovation in the console space, and Game Pass, the premier gaming subscription service, is widely adored by the Xbox fanbase. When Microsoft launched Xbox Game Pass, they went ahead and bolstered it with tons of genuinely great content from indies and partnered third-party studios, and they knew that to truly succeed, they needed their own content. By making more than a few very smart studio acquisitions, and throughout many conversations and interviews over the years, they've sold gamers on a promise. This is a new Xbox. This time it will power your dreams. Hi-Fi Rush was the first game that, in my opinion, truly matched that vision. Bold, bright and innovative, it captured the heart of what gaming is to me, and I suspect many others. But it also symbolised many of those promises and words spoken in physical, toe-tapping form. When Microsoft closed Tango Gameworks, it wasn't just a studio that got shuttered. It wasn't just a Hi-Fi Rush sequel, something the studio pitched as wanting to do before they were closed down, that got canned. No, it was the promise, the very ideal of what video games represent and what this new Xbox and its super-powered and fully armed first-party teams could deliver that got the boot too. Hi-Fi Rush was more than just a fun action rhythm platformer from a first-party team. It was those ideals personified and given life in video game form. The very ideals that Phil Spencer and team have been selling Xbox fans for the last decade. That Xbox was all about the games, a variety of genres, unique ideas, a team that can take creative risks even if they didn't always pay off. Big studios didn't have to worry because the niche games can be supported by the behemoths and the recurring revenue from Game Pass. Armed with both, Xbox were going to grow together, pulling in more gamers, widening the palette for many in genres people had never tried before. When Hi-Fi Rush shadow dropped out of nowhere, it became the very poster child of what this new Xbox could deliver going forward. And by closing Tango Gameworks and any hopes of a direct sequel from that team, Xbox has just seemingly turned its back on that promise. Xbox has had a rough journey in this industry post the Xbox 360 era, and frustratingly, all of those difficulties and bumps in the road were of Microsoft's making. In 2013, it took its fans, its position and its power in the industry completely for granted and launched a console where it was quite prominent that games, the whole point of a video game console, were not the focus. In doing that, it sent a message to many that cover this industry that's never been forgotten. When Phil took over, there was much talk about lessons learned, but when we see Microsoft make decisions like this, it's hard to reconcile that they actually have been. Especially when we have Xbox's own Power On documentary, where Xbox President Sarah Bond says,
"We acquired Lionhead in 2006, shut it down in 2016. A couple years later, we reflected back on that experience. What did we learn? How do we not repeat our same mistakes?"
And then we have Phil Spencer saying,
"You acquire a studio for what they're great at now, and your job is to help them accelerate how they do what they do, not them accelerate what you do."
Well, you don't let people that truly don't understand this industry take the wheel. Xbox did that in 2013, and look what happened. It's clear that the sheer size and power of the merger with Activision Blizzard King has changed what Xbox is within Microsoft. Armed with more data than you can shake a stick at, and a desire for constant, continuous growth that all public traded companies wield, it's clear to me that the money men have more than one hand on the steering wheel now, just like when Xbox 360 was at the top of its game. It's pure conjecture on my part, but when folks like Tim Stewart, Amy Hood and Satya Nadella take charge of things, and I'm sure they're having way more of a say in this post-Activision world, they're going to make choices that aren't about the creative. Xbox is arguably Microsoft's only cool consumer-facing brand, and by forgetting what Xbox is, what it represents, creativity, fun, imagination, it risks tanking that brand completely. Throughout this piece, I've referred to Microsoft as this giant singular entity, but that's not what Xbox is actually made up of. The real Xbox is made up of creators, artists, designers, people that wrangle the insanity that is video game development into something that brings joy to millions of people across the planet. If they lose sight of that, if they forget amongst all of the dollar signs and the recurring revenue and the numbers on an Excel spreadsheet that Xbox is meant to mean more than just money in the bank, then they're going to fail. Phil and team need to argue this point ad nauseum internally. Otherwise, the fan base that they've cultivated over 20 years may just leave them behind for good. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do hit like, do hit subscribe, and if you really love what we do, you can support XboxEra directly by visiting patreon.com/XboxEra. And we'll see you next time.